For brewers and lovers of craft beer, it's not uncommon to partake in the consumption of these tasty beverages on a regular, perhaps even daily basis. A common trope in these circles is that we delight more in the organoleptic experience than in the stuporous buzz that accompanies such consumption, which is all fine and dandy, of course, so long as it doesn't negatively impact other areas of our life. While thoughtful drinking is often encouraged, a growing number of people have begun taking the arguably more extreme measure of temporary abstinence. This is the Brewlosophy Podcast. I'm your host, Marshall Schott, and joining me this week to share our thoughts and opinions on what has come to be known as Dry January is contributor Steve Thanos.
Hey, Marshall. Kind of interested in talking about this whole concept of Dry January. I'll share definitely my views on it, and I'm interested in hearing what you have to say, and eventually hearing what all of our fans have to think about with Dry January.
Yeah, the planning for these Brews Views episodes typically involves the co-host and I going over various topics, which in this case would be Steve and myself, which are often proposed by our patrons, and settling on one that we have at least some disagreements on. That's kind of a thing with these Brews Views episodes. Well, that's not really how this particular episode worked out. Rather, during last January, which was like a month and a half ago, the Brewlosophy contributors began sharing their thoughts on the tradition of Dry January, in part due to your participation in it, Steve, and you're the one who suggested we focus on it in this Brews Views episode. I personally love discussing things like this with people, and especially when I don't share every single opinion with that person. So I'm really looking forward to digging into this topic this week. Now, as I point out every single time we do one of these Brews Views, this is a series where we allow ourselves to speak a little bit more candidly than usual, meaning we might use language that some people don't really like or share ideas you disagree with. That's sort of the point of this. So it's certainly not our intention to piss anybody off, but rather have an honest, unfiltered conversation about a topic that some might view as being a bit controversial, all in the name of learning and fun, of course. Alrighty, if you enjoyed this show and you want to help us to keep producing it, we'd love for you to become a patron of Brewlosophy as well, which you can do over at patreon.com/Brewlosophy. By making a small monthly pledge, you'll receive rewards like access to unpublished contributor recipes, unique discounts at YakimaValleyHops.com, and an invitation to a monthly live Q&A session with somebody in the brewing world. Coming up next month, or later this month, I suppose, March of 2025, Brewlosophy contributor, host of The Brewlosophy Show, and the only person on the crew with an English accent, our very own Martin Keene will be taking the stage. The last time Martin hosted one of these Q&As, he was still running the Homebrew Challenge YouTube channel. And in fact, it was during those conversations on getting him to be a guest on our Q&A that we ultimately convinced him to join the crew, which we are all still very excited about. Martin's going to be hanging out on Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. So be sure to make your pledge of just $3 or more by Monday, March 17th. If you want to attend that session, all sessions are stored on our private Patreon and YouTube pages, so patrons who are unable to attend the live session can go back and watch them whenever they like. Learn more about all of the rewards we offer for your support and become a patron today over at patreon.com/Brewlosophy. Another really easy way to support us is by using the links found at brewlosophy.com/support when you're shopping online. Your experience won't change at all, and we get a little kickback for the referral that helps us to cover the cost of running all of this stuff. Finally, if you wouldn't mind leaving a rating and review of this show in Apple Podcast or wherever it is you listen to podcasts, that'd be awesome as well. Feedback is brought to you by Clawhammer Supply, who in addition to having a remarkable YouTube channel chock full of great brewing related content, sell what we believe to be some of the best electric brewing systems on the market. If you've been considering making the move from propane to electric, you owe it to yourself to check out Clawhammer Supply. Whether you're after a 120 volt 5-gallon unit or something bigger like their powerful 240 volt 10-gallon system, Clawhammer has got you covered. Learn more about everything they have to offer at clawhammersupply.com, and don't forget to check out their YouTube channel as well. All right, listener Ricky Alexander, who's also a patron, wrote in with some feedback after listening to our recent episode where we talked about carbonating a Trappist single with either dextrose or candy syrup. This was natural carbonation, of course. Ricky said, you guys mentioned you were curious about why you would need so much more Belgian candy syrup compared to dextrose. My immediate thought was that dextrose is granulated sugar and Belgian candy syrup is a liquid. So obviously there's a lot of water weight in syrup. I assume this might make up some of the difference, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Steve, what do you think about that? That makes perfect sense to me, and I'm shocked I didn't think of it myself. But you have to use more Belgian candy syrup to naturally carbonate a beer than you would granulated dextrose or sucrose.
I've never thought of that before, but it makes perfect sense that it's there's more liquid involved in it with the syrup, so therefore it would take more to start to naturally carbonate. So yeah, I mean, the logic is there, I think. So sounds good to me, right?
Sounds good. I'm with you. And I mean, you think about it, if you were to evaporate off all of the water in candy syrup, which I don't even know how you would do that because of the fact it's inverted, which again, I'm no sugar expert, but you'd ostensibly be left with granulated glucose and fructose, I'd imagine. So, and my guess would be that it'd be a much closer amount that you would use of that without the water weight as dextrose. But I don't know, Ricky, your thought makes plenty of sense to me, and so I'm just going to go with that. Really, ultimately, it's not that huge of a difference, but there is a difference there. So thank you so much for reaching out, Ricky. If you have show feedback, you can send it to feedback@brulosophy.com or drop us a line on social media. When we return from this break, our views on Dry January.
We all know that designing recipes is really fun, and doing it well is so much easier with good software. We at Brulosophy recently made the switch to Brewfather, and honestly, y'all, we could not be happier. Brewfather utilizes the latest technology to bring you the most robust cloud-based recipe design software that can be accessed anywhere, on your phone, tablet, desktop, and even offline. It also works seamlessly with numerous third-party devices to make it easier to monitor every step of your brew. I know change can be difficult, but trust me when I say you need to go to brewfather.app today to try it out for yourself. That's brewfather.app.
There's no denying that stainless steel is the best material for brewing equipment, and Delta Brewing Systems offers some of the lowest prices on high-quality stainless gear, like the Firm Tank, which in addition to holding 8 gallons or 30 liters of wort, comes with a domed lid to even further reduce the chances of a messy blow-off. Plus, it can hold up to 4 psi of pressure for closed transfers. Delta Brewing Systems also has their own line of brew kettles, as well as one of the lowest-priced all-in-one electric brewing systems out there, and their prices are shockingly low. If you're in the market for legit stainless gear that won't break the bank, do yourself a favor and head over to deltabrewingsystems.com today. It seems to me that over the last few years, talk of Dry January's increased quite a bit, whether it's from folks participating or people sharing their opinions about why they don't like it. If it isn't already clear, Steve does Dry January, while I have never done it. At least since I've been of legal drinking age, I haven't been dry in a January. Now, rather than just going back and forth with our opinions, given how seemingly hot this topic seems to be right now, we sought opinions from our patrons that we're going to be sprinkling in and commenting on as well. In fact, it's going to take up the bulk of these segments because I really think that this is an interesting one, and to hear other people's opinions, it's just going to make it all the more rich in my opinion. So before we get into all of that, though, I thought it would be really cool to start with a bit of background and history on Dry January.
I love the history of this, and just the history of things alone, it intrigues me. So in 1942, of all times, Finnish government encouraged people to reduce their alcohol intake to save resources for war against the Soviet Union. So January was the time where they just said, you know what, we're going to abstain, and it kind of became official there. And lo and behold, in 2011, a woman by the name of Emily Robinson decided to give up alcohol for a month, ironically enough, during January, as she was preparing for a half marathon. I have a good friend, actually, who has been doing Ironman competitions, and he has actually reduced his alcohol intake because he was just thinking that, you know, even if he's drinking like 5% beers in the mornings, he just wasn't feeling great when he was training. And something that he really took seriously. So he just really reduced his alcohol intake. And it makes sense.
Yeah, I ran a half marathon once. Never again, by the way. I will never ever submit myself to that torturous experience. But I did it once, and funnily enough, the drink they gave us when you crossed the finish line, was a Michelob Ultra.
Okay.
Apparently, it's like a recovery thing that
I've heard
runners
that before.
do. Yeah, super weird. But I think the point is that, like you mentioned, in 2011, this gal in the UK, Emily Robinson, decided to just give up alcohol for that month purely as a way to prepare for this marathon. And this by my understanding, at least, Steve, this turned into in the course of like 2 or 3 years, it turned into something that we are now all recognizing as Dry January.
Exactly. And it's amazing how what seemingly was starting off as like a very small personal thing picked up and, got some legs, and people then kind of gravitated towards that. It's just amazing how that all kind of the infancy of and the genesis of all of that. So
it blows my mind that one person's plight to make themselves, more healthy more prepared, I suppose, to run a race, basically. People started asking her about it. Like, it was a big deal. I maybe Emily Robinson is is in the public eye already. I don't know about that, but the fact that she did this thing that was personal and it got picked up and news outlets started asking her about what it was like to, cut out drink for an entire month. I guess in just the following year, she joined this program called Alcohol Change UK. And they encouraged, abstaining from drinking in the month of January. That it led to even more increased public interest. And by 2013, the first official, Dry January as we know it, at least, was here. And not very many people did it back then, but my word, it has blown up. I mean, I was Googling I'm be honest with you. I Googled how many people in America participate in Dry January. 22% of American adults surveyed said that they were participating in Dry January. That is a huge number of people.
Yeah, it is. I'm amazed at that. I
Good
really am.
Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the next stat that we have, the 70% people who were completely abstaining from, as opposed to cutting back their consumption, is mind-boggling as well.
I hear about this thing called Moist January, which I think is hilarious.
Yes.
And it's like, I'm just going to not drink so much. I mean, I feel like the older I get, I guess the more moist I get, which sounds odd, but you start to feel it more. I went out with my with Tim and his wife and my wife last night, and tied one on like we used to 15 years ago. And you better believe I'm feeling it today, which is partially due to the fact that I'm not drinking like that as much these days. And so it is interesting though. So like you mentioned, you got 22% of American adults who are surveyed, said that they participated in Dry January, with 70% of that group completely abstaining. The other 30%, I'm assuming, just cut back their drinking a little bit.
Right.
And the number one reason they cited, and this is going to come up when we start sharing our opinions on this, the number one reason that they cited for doing this was health concerns. So these are people who are they hit the month of January and they're like, you know what, I want to do something to help my health out, at least for this month. And so I'm going to completely abstain. I mean, is that, we're going to move into talking about our reasons for participating in your case, or for me for not participating. But is that, I would imagine that's something that plays a role in your decision, Steve?
It was totally that decision that I made. It was for health reasons. Not that I'm, needed to, as prescribed by a doctor or anything like that. I want to give people the wrong impression. I'm not dying or anything like that.
We're all dying, Steve. That's life is the process of dying. I know.
Yeah, right. But I thought it would be a step in the right direction. Since May of 2024, I've been going to a gym nearby in my neighborhood. My wife and I both are, and we both kind of caught on with that and just really have this newfound love for working out and eating healthy, which we've always tried to maintain some sort of like healthy eating habits. And I just kind of made the effort to, do both working out and healthy eating. And with that comes, some decisions that I had to make for my drinking. Again, not that it was ever really that much. I don't drink during the week typically. I don't like how I feel in the morning if I'm even drinking a few during the weekdays when having to get up for work and whatnot. So it was mostly just over the weekends, and I figured that for health reasons it would be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think again, this is going to come up, I think, throughout this episode in talking about our views. And I think part of it is that we have, I'm not saying just you and me, Steve. I think humans in general have differing opinions on what it means to be healthy, right?
For sure.
I have a very strong, there's kind of the hedonistic argument or that utilitarian argument from a deeper philosophical perspective of, you only live once, enjoy the time that you have on this earth because it's not going to happen again. Now, that for me is driven by a very, strong conviction that there's not much else after we die, other than becoming worm food. So,
right.
But at the same time, now you're sitting here going, well, I want to have this good time, but I need to balance that because I want that good time to last a lot longer than, you know what I'm saying? Than it might if I'm, drinking my face off every single night type of deal.
Exactly.
I want that good time to include my family and for them to be healthy and happy and love their dad and their husband and all of that, right? So it all plays into that. It's not just a balls to the wall, fuck around and you'll never find out. No, you will find out. And we've been there. I mean, there's not a single person listening to this show, I don't think, who hasn't overdone it probably many handfuls of times to where you're lying in the middle of the night with a foot on the floor because you're trying to stop the spins thinking I'm never going to touch alcohol again,
Yep, I've been there.
Yeah, we all have. And that's now, to me, I'm looking at dry January and I want to put a little disclaimer out there. We do this with every Brews Use. I always say that thing up at the top, that we're going to use language that some people might not like, yada, yada. This is one of those touchier subjects, I think, where some people might misconceive what our intentions are. Because I don't do dry January doesn't mean I think other people shouldn't do it. I couldn't give a shit less what you choose to do in the month of January or February or any other month of the year. You do what you need to do for yourself. This is an entertaining topic. This is a show that is designed to be somewhat entertaining, maybe fun. And so we might be a little bit more terse in the way we present our opinions. In no way are we deriding people. We would be making fun of each other if that was the case, Steve. And we're definitely not doing that. I am sharing my specific opinions. Steve is sharing, you're going to share your specific opinions, and we are not using that to judge the other person. Are we? Is that fair?
It's very fair. I can honestly, I don't care what other people want to do. I mean, if you want to do dry January, that's awesome. You think that it's the wrong message to send out to people because breweries are hurting these days and you need to support them. So be it. Yep. Breweries need people like you. I get that. I have good friends who are in the brewing industry, and by me not, going to their brewery in the month of January, they didn't get my dollar. I think that they can, quote unquote, forgive me. Not that I really did anything wrong per se, and we'll probably get into this more later. But I don't fully understand that argument of, you're a trader and you need to, support your local breweries, 12 months out of the year.
Right.
Okay. But then the month of October, when I was there collecting data and there for my homebrew club meetings and there, with friends or my wife on a, given Saturday or Sunday and spending, I don't know how much money, that doesn't get included. Like I'm finding, some flaws in that logic.
I find that logic utterly embarrassing, to be honest. And I get that, again, this is going to be something that listeners are likely, punching their stereos for when they hear me say that. I am not obliged to keep you in business. That is not my job as somebody who enjoys drinking beer. You produce a product. If you're a craft brewer, and I get it. If there aren't people coming in, you're not making the money to stay in business. That's totally right. You cannot put that on people who are making decisions to keep themselves healthy or whatever other reason they might have, for participating in something like dry January. That is such a silly argument, in my opinion. Do something different. I don't know what else to tell you, but we are not to feel bad about the fact that we don't want to consume alcohol for any reason.
Right.
It's part of the reason that I don't give a shit if people get pissed at me for liking Miller Lite and talking about it.
Exactly.
Get over it. I have no obligation. I have no obligation to appease the people who hate big beer. That is not. I don't care.
Right.
I don't care. And there, it's so weird. I think back to 15 years ago, right around the time I was really picking up and getting obsessed with brewing and stuff, and the arguments that people would have when they'd see a picture of me with a Coors Light can or whatever. It's like, you really care that much? And my thing is, I guarantee you, I still spend more on craft beer than most people who are bitching about the fact that I drink Miller Lite. I can almost guarantee that. Just because I'm supplementing it with something else that I enjoy. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox here.
Just to kind of go back on your soapbox there, I think one thing you're failing to recognize, though, Marshall, is that your cult-like personality or stardom with Brewlosophy has made it very much known that you are a celebrity. And people are concerned with celebrities. So, I don't know. I think you need to embrace that, my man.
I know. Look, I believe it was you and me who talked about this a couple years ago. That was like, okay, I'm not going to use that word. That's not going to change who I am. I'm not going to fake that I don't like something that I do just to appease the audience. Whatever, man.
Exactly.
So, and such is also the case with the topic of this show, Dry January. So to me, Dry January is one of those unique global events that is wholly personal for the person participating in it, meaning that it's intended to benefit the person directly, not necessarily anyone else. You think about, I remember I've only participated in Movember one time. It was back in 2014, I believe. And for those who don't know, Movember is like, in the month of November, dudes don't shave their mustache. It's kind of funny,
right?
But it's to raise awareness for testicular cancer, I believe is what it is, or like men's issues. And that, to me, I'm like, okay, that's cool. So it's this big thing that a lot of people are doing to raise money while looking, in my opinion, very, dapper with their mustache.
Exactly.
Whereas Dry January, it's purely a personal thing. It's not a fundraising event. It's not that, as far as I'm aware, Steve.
Right. I don't think it is.
It really is. Yeah, so it really is just something people do for themselves. Now, for most of, not all, of course, but for most of my adult life, I've been very cognizant of my alcohol consumption overall, to the point that I'll often go days without having a single drink. Even to this day, like you said earlier, Steve, I'm really not drinking much during the week. If a buddy comes over to help me with something after work, or if I stop by Tim's house to play some darts, sure, I'll crush a couple, 2 or 3 Miller Lights or whatever. But back in the early days of Brewlosophy, even it wasn't a problem. But I'd come home and I'd have 3 or 4 taster glasses of beer, and like you said earlier too, I'd wake up the next morning going, man, that doesn't feel too good, and that was all I needed to is the kick in the ass to like not drink so much during the week. I can honestly say I've never had a problem drinking. I've never used it as a crutch. If I'm really stressed, which doesn't happen often, but if I'm really stressed about something, if I'm having issues, at work or in a relationship with a friend or something, I will avoid drinking because I don't want it to get in the way of taking care of business, right? So, and then, you can think about the fact that for me, health stuff, and I feel like I'm kind of reiterating a lot of the same stuff you are, except we went, divergent pathways here. Health stuff is not a motivating factor for me when it comes to my drinking necessarily. I go to the gym at least 3 times a week with my wife. Like you, we generally eat fairly healthy. I don't have any like heart problems. I don't have high cholesterol or anything like that. So drinking is just this, to me, it's like this tertiary thing in my life that I enjoy for various reasons. I've said many times before, if beer didn't have alcohol in it, I don't think I would drink it. I like the buzz. I'm not going to pretend I don't. I don't like getting plastered necessarily, so I don't do that very often. But for me, it wouldn't make sense necessarily to engage in something that forces me to abstain from an activity that I thoroughly enjoy, when during that month I might be drinking on 5 or 6 occasions in total anyways. So for me, it would, like, I'm in my head, I'm like, what would get me to the point of wanting to participate? And I just can't think of anything.
I think for me, and I'll tell you the story right now. I was sitting on my sofa New Year's Eve with my wife, and I did not have a drink in my hand. Did not have a drink at all that day. It was like 8 o'clock, 8:30. And I mentioned something to my wife. I'm like, hey, you ever think about participating in Dry January? And she was like, no, never really gave it much thought. And I'm like, I think I'm going to do it. Like, I think I'm going to, I'm going to do this. I'm going to challenge myself. And that's exactly what it was. It was a challenge for myself. It wasn't this like, well, it's so trendy and I'm going to just fall in line with the trends, because honestly, I have zero interest in following trends. I am who I am. And like, John Candy's character in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles says, yes. I like me. And that's fine. So, I didn't really follow the trends. I just followed what sounded and seemed like it was the next step for me, for trying to, reach a goal of losing weight and being active more and being in the gym. So it just seemed like the next logical step. And I was successful. I didn't drink at all for the whole month of January. And it felt pretty damn good. Ironically enough, I got sick, maybe just like a week after, I was technically able to drink again, right? February 1st. So, my abstaining from alcohol lasted not only for 31 days, but it actually lasted for a total of 37 days, which I thought was impressive. And it was mostly the extra 6 days was because I was sick, and I just did not feel like drinking anything when I was really sick. To kind of go back on what we were saying before about the whole not drinking during the week. I don't, for the longest time now, I haven't had drinks during the week. And for me, like when I was going through the whole month of Dry January, that was never really like the quote unquote hard part. I think the hard part was mostly like the ritualistic come home from work on a Friday, and pop open a beer, or, hang around the house on a Saturday, have a beer. So that was the hard part. And that was something that my wife and I both talked about, got into, hop water, actually started to embrace non-alcoholic beer, for the first time, which I have to say isn't half bad. It really kind of changed my tune on non-alcoholic beers. And, I learned a little about that, and, it was pretty good. So that's where I'm at. I'm happy about it. I lost like 13 pounds, I think,
God damn,
while
nice
I was doing this. So it just kind of fit in with what I was doing in my life. So, I'm happy about it. Not sure if I'm going to do it again.
Yeah. Was this your first Dry January, or had you
first
participated
ever?
before?
Yep. First
ever. Okay.
Yep.
I think that's what ultimately stirred up the discussion among the Brulosophy crew, was that nobody else but you. I don't know. Does Cade participate? I think he might have said he does too.
I think Cade has in the past. I don't know if he was doing it this year, but maybe he was. I don't know. But yeah, there were some strong opinions. I know Will and Jordan, who are both strong-minded, strong opinionated men who are going to share their views on things, and I love them for it. And yeah, I mean, they definitely have a view on it that was different than mine, but we can all get along with different views, right?
Oh yeah, and we do very well. And I think that's part of the reason that we like this Brews Use episode, is it kind of demonstrates that we are not just this homogenous group of people. We are all very different. We have strong opinions about some things. Some of us don't care about other things that another contributor might care about. And it's fun to be able to have a kind of a venue for us to be able to discuss these. Now, you mentioned something that I can really relate with, and it's that kind of personal use. I think you used the word challenge. Mm-hmm. To me, I would say it's almost like a test of will, right? Can I do this? And you can learn a lot about yourself when you put yourself to the test like that. I got a little story actually that just came. I mean, what was it? 2007. I was in my a practicum, which is pre-internship. Basically working for free as a psychologist, and I'm working at Fresno State University in the counseling center, and I go to open my bag for lunch that I packed up, and I would bring 2 cans of soda with me, and I had converted to drinking diet soda because sugar's so bad for you, and I remember popping open that first can and being like, God, this doesn't even taste good. What am I doing this for? And I thought, just to myself, I didn't even mention it to anybody. I thought, I'm going to stop drinking soda for a while, and I'm going to see how long this lasts. To this day, I have not consumed a soda, and I'll taste it. If my kids make a suicide or something, I'll taste it, whatever. I have not ordered a soda. I don't purchase soda for myself, and it's been almost 20 years now that I've been soda free. So I get that motivation to see if you can test it. And I wonder, in fact, how many people start Dry January and then just keep going with it and just don't drink anymore at all. I just stay sober,
That is interesting to me. I don't know if people kind of abstain forever. And if they do, they do, more power to you, for whatever your reasons. It's cool with me. When you have had soda, like regular full sugar soda, does it taste different to you now? If you have to have like one or a little bit of like a sip here and there, does it taste different?
Yeah.
Yeah. Me too.
It is not, it is shocking to me how sweet it is.
Yes.
Like, I cannot believe people consume that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I will say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a time when I was at the grocery store. This is like maybe a year ago, and we don't really buy soda that much. If we do, it's like the zero sugar stuff or diet. And I picked up a Dr. Pepper, regular Dr. Pepper, and I took a drink and in my car, and I'm like, oh my God, like your same reaction. How do people drink this? This is it's undrinkable. I can't. And it's been a number of years since I, kind of went off of regular soda. And thankfully I don't miss it at all.
Well, and to our point about, I can hold that opinion and not, expect other people to fall in line. My kids drink soda. Now, they are, because of the fact that my wife kind of jumped on board with me. She doesn't abstain like I do. Like, I've got a commitment to not drinking soda. She's just like, all right, he did it. I'm going to kind of jump on that train, but we'll go out to In-N-Out and she'll get a Coke,
Sure.
She's not like me with it, but we still, we'll get a 12-pack of sodas that will be in our fridge for about a month. And we're very, very strict with our kids on how much they can drink. Of course, if we take them out to dinner, they can order sodas. It's not nuts, but we're not saying just because I have this opinion means you have to have it. So you're probably going to get sick of me saying that, but
no, it makes so much sense though. Like, especially as being parents, right? Like, I'm not gonna, everything that I do doesn't need to be, mirror image of what what our kids do.
Yeah, exactly. Now, just my final point, and I don't know if there are any other ones. We have a note on here in our show notes that say other possible reasons people might participate, and by other, we're just saying different than health reasons, which is what motivated you primarily. You did say it earlier, but you have to know. I mean, I am fully convinced that there are some people who do just love engaging in these things because they're trendy. I call it the TikTok influence. Like, yes, you're only doing it because you want to be able to talk about it with other people.
Right.
If there's one reason for doing Dry January that I find kind of laughable, it's that one.
Yeah.
Because it feels so meaningless when it should be a personally meaningful thing that you're engaging in. But hey, if you get your kicks off of copying other people and talking about it, by all means, you do you.
Right.
So what we're going to do now, though, is start going through a bunch of comments on Dry January that was shared by our amazing patrons. And then we're going to provide our opinions on the opinions that they share. I think this is going to be fun. We've intentionally tried to avoid reading these prior because we want it to feel as real as possible, our reactions. And so if we fumble a little bit, it's because, when people are just responding to a question on a platform like Patreon, that it's not like they're editing themselves bottles too much. So I do apologize if our reading of these isn't as clear as possible, but I'm going to do my best. So the first one comes from Bill Gade, who says, I never did dry January, but do limit my drinking to weekends mostly. We all need breaks once in a while. Too much of a good thing is bad for you. And I will say, Steve, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one, primarily that last sentence, that too much of a good thing is bad for you.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with Bill. And I think that, if I'm going to sit here and pound, 9-10% barley wines every single day, that's going to be bad for me, and although it sounds really good right now, but I can't help but think that, too much of anything is not so good for you. So,
in terms of like physical consumption of products, I don't disagree with Bill. You could drink yourself to death on water. I mean, we know that. So I get what he's saying. The only two I was like, okay, I read this just now and I'm like, what are some things that you can't have too much of? The only things I can come up with are love and kindness, and then maybe money. I'd like to have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like too much of that, you could do a lot of good with it. So
for sure.
But yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, Bill. I think that I'm with Bill on a lot of this actually. That I don't drink very much during the week. I'm limiting it mostly to weekends. So in a month like January, that's 4 to 5 weekends that I might be drinking on. And even then, it's usually like 1 or 2 nights. And I have a feeling people might be surprised to hear that, the co-hosts of a beer and brewing podcast aren't, getting plastered every single night. No, we're responsible adults who enjoy brewing and beer, but that doesn't mean that we're over consuming. So I'm with Bill on that one. And too much of a good thing when we're talking about beer and alcohol in general, I do agree, is it could be very, very bad for you. We know that. So, all right, next comment comes from patron James Splinter, who says, I'll support anyone who wants to do a dry January or no nut November. I'm not sure I know what that is. I think I can guess though. Sober October, etc. I just don't feel the need to deprive myself of this tasty beverage that combines art, science, and fun naming conventions. There you go, Steve.
Exactly.
Some of my friends have become sober for health reasons, some for family reasons, and I support them by having a sparkling water on tap.
Two things that jump out at me. Of course, that fun naming conventions is near and dear to my heart. So thank you, James, for recognizing the underrated significance of naming our beers. Let's keep that fight going. And then also, I love the fact that he is supporting friends or family members who might be doing a sober October or dry January and having a sparkling water on tap. That's pretty rad. I like that. So I full-heartedly agree with James here. I think he has a lot here that he says. And I mean, for him, he enjoys the art, the science of brewing, and he enjoys his beverage. So, who am I to say that he's wrong?
Well, and you enjoy all that stuff as well. It's
Definitely.
just that you took a 1 month break to kickstart, and I think that's key, is that for some people, something organized like dry January or sober October, whatever, can really be just the motivation they need to make a permanent change in their life. It doesn't mean that permanent change is going to be sobriety, but maybe it starts, the very least gets you thinking about alcohol consumption differently. And I think that is absolutely important. I too do my best to keep sparkling water on tap, primarily because we refuse to let our kids drink alcohol, and they love sparkling water,
right?
Because they don't get that much soda. We've already talked about that.
Exactly.
So they love sparkling water, and you can buy all kinds of this is just a little side tip. More Beer sells all kinds of like essences, fruit essences and extracts. You can get them on Amazon now. And a little goes a very long way. A 5-gallon batch of lime water my wife and I calculated that the water's free, right? So you're just adding a small portion of like an $8 vial of lime flavoring. The 5-gallon batch cost us like 85 cents is what we calculated it to be. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, if you have really good friends in professional brewing and you ask them if they have samples of these, I got a handful of leftovers from Crow and Wolf.
Oh, cool.
So it was completely free. I mean, we had mango, we had passion fruit, I had blackberry water. It was awesome. And we blew through it because my kids love the stuff. So anyways, I agree with you as well, James, on that. I'm not going to participate. I don't see myself ever finding personal meaning in engaging in abstinence for the reason of dry January. But like I said before, I absolutely, if I'm not feeling well or if I think I need to abstain for a certain amount of time for my health, I absolutely will without issue. So next comment comes from Nathan Keppel, who says 2024 was my first dry January, and since I was of drinking age. Prior to last year, I'd never considered it. During winter of 2023, I had some time off between Christmas and New Year's and found myself consuming more alcohol and food than I probably should and added more weight than I was comfortable. Dry January was my attempt at a little reset. A week in, I was feeling great and decided to test myself further by minimizing all carbs. By the end of January, I lost 20 pounds. Wow. While I resumed my alcohol consumption early February, I continued some of the healthy habits I picked up in January. By the end of the year, I was down almost 75 pounds. Are you kidding me?
Right on.
That's crazy. The challenge in January helped my self-restraint through the year with food and alcohol and make better decisions in general, he says. Not sure why giving up alcohol for a month was the catalyst I needed, but it worked for me. For perspective, I was an overweight 44-year-old male. So you and I are in that same age range, Steve. This guy lost 75 pounds and it was kickstarted by his participation in dry January. That's fucking amazing.
It is fucking amazing. And that's kind of where I want to be right now with this, this goal that I set myself up for. And I have to say that, dry January was sort of the catalyst to like, okay, am I really serious about this? Or is this going to be another one of those things that, I talk about and then maybe I'm successful with for a while, but then, habits, continue and, I'm back to where I was before, if not heavier.
Right.
And I think you touched on it a lot with James's comment before, but it gives me now this totally new perspective on drinking, where before maybe beer consumed me, in the sense that it was always there, or it is always there. I'm a Brewlosophy contributor. I brew experiments. I'm constantly in my garage brewing when, of course, the temperature is right here in Illinois. But there's always something on tap, and I needed to make a choice between my health for myself and for my family, or the taps that I have in my garage. And I think I made the best decision. So yeah, I'm happy with it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because as people are aware, I just moved into a new place. I'm still in the middle of, I was telling you this before we started the show, that I'm in the middle of setting up my studio. It's been so much fun. I've invested so much energy into this project, and it feels very similar to the energy that I invest in brewing. I have not been able to brew since we moved in, basically since November, because of the fact that I don't have the setup yet. I still have to get an electrician out here, and do all that stuff. And I miss it. You miss that thing that you enjoy. Now, to say that there isn't a link between having beer on tap and the amount of beer that gets consumed is fallacious. Come on now. When it's there for drinking, and we're going to do it. And in a weird way, and this is going to sound, I don't want to come across as sounding like I'm making excuses, but when I first built my first Keezer, it was almost impossible for me. I say impossible with tongue in cheek, right? To come home and you see this beautiful 6-7 tap Keezer that I know I could just pull that handle and there's a delicious beer in each one of those. And I would walk by and I'd be like, screw it, I'm going to have a little sample. And then it's like turns into 3 samples, like I mentioned earlier. I learned very quickly that I have to have self-restraint. Otherwise, 1, I'm not going to have any beer to collect data on. That's a big thing for us at Brewlosophy.
Of course.
But 2, I'm going to get sick. Whether it's a health impact or a familial impact or something like that, I have to be able to do it. So in a weird way, having that there, let's call it temptation, whatever you want, and not going for it all the time was something that I learned by its presence in a weird way. And so again, I know that I'm a weirdo. I stopped drinking soda purely to see if I could, and I still don't drink it. Like I get that, but I do think it's interesting. Final comment, and then we're going to take a quick break, comes from Walter F., who says, I understand the concept. It was just nothing that I was ever interested in doing. That's kind of where I'm at as well, that I get why people might want to do it, and I appreciate and encourage them to do so. It just wouldn't do anything for me. So I think you're kind of the opposite of that, right? Or
I guess so. I guess I just add anything I could add to it would be that the just the personal interest of it was intriguing to me. That the challenge was intriguing to me. But yeah, I mean, I like Walter's comment, and because it's short and sweet and to the point. And I especially love Nathan's comment from before. And way to go, dude, for the weight loss. I hope that I'm as successful as you were, and good luck in maintaining. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's truly, truly amazing, Nathan. More power to you, bud. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got a lot more opinions from our patrons on Dry January.
The dry yeast revolution is here, and Cellar Science is leading the charge. Cellar Science has expanded the world of dry yeast far beyond the drab landscape of yesteryear. With over 20 strains of beer and wine yeast now available, you can brew any style. Not to mention that their unique growth and harvesting process greatly increases lipid levels in yeast cell walls, removing the need to aerate your wort on the first pitch and allowing you to directly pitch without rehydration. Couple that with the other advantages of dry yeast, such as higher cell count and viability, and you can clearly see why commercial breweries across the U.S. are using dry yeast and choosing Cellar Science.
Chilling wort can be a chore, especially after a long brew day, but not with the Exchillerator Counterflow Chiller, which can chill a 5-gallon or 19-liter batch of wort in 5 minutes or less, leading to a strong cold break and clear wort in the fermenter. Brewlosophy's Matt Del Fiacco uses the Exchillerator Max and absolutely loves it. In addition to improved chilling efficiency, every Exchillerator comes with a 5-year warranty that covers the entire chiller for manufacturer defects. If you're looking to up your chilling game and a CFC is right for you, head over to Exchillerator.com today. As every brewer knows, the best beer requires the best hops, which Yakima Valley Hops provides fresh from the source to brewers around the world, carrying everything from classics like Cascade to modern favorites like Galaxy and Mosaic, as well as other ingredients and gear. Yakima Valley Hops has it all. And don't forget to check out their new podcast, The Late Edition, where the YVH crew goes into depth on our favorite plant with industry experts. Head over to YakimaValleyHops.com now to see all they have to offer and subscribe to The Late Edition wherever it is you listen to podcasts. I'm really enjoying going over other people's thoughts on the topic of Dry January and sort of wondering why we didn't do this type of a thing earlier. Maybe we'll continue to bring in, patrons' opinions and stuff for all of our brews views. Let us know what you think, listeners. I think this is a lot more full. I feel like it's a more in-depth than when it's just two people sharing their opinions. So again, let us know what you think. First comment for this segment comes from Lucan Woodworth, who says, my wife and I have done Dry January for the last 6 years. The very first year was actually doing the whole 30 diet, which includes no alcohol plus a bunch of dietary restrictions such as no sugar, gluten, or dairy. Wow. This helped identify some triggers for my wife's migraines. So overall, it was a positive experience. The year after, we had no intentions of doing the diet, but we did like the idea of taking a month off of alcohol, especially coming out of the holiday season, which there is an abundance of booze. It just seemed like a good month to take a break. I really like the YouTube channel Whiskey Tribe, who do a dry week every quarter. Their theory is to take a small break to reset the palate and make sure there are no dependency issues creeping up. I've liked that theory and prefer to apply it to 1 month after rather than 1 week per quarter. Obviously, dry January is a personal choice and not for everyone, so to each their own. I've never heard of the Whiskey Tribe YouTube channel. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
The comment about resetting the palate, I'll tell you, like we talked about with the soda, Steve, that was a palate reset I think I needed so that I didn't go back to drinking soda because it was disgusting. If I take 4 or 5 days off of drinking, which I do very regularly, the first beer I crack, I don't care if it's a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, a Miller Lite, a Pliny the Elder, it tastes so insanely good. It's wild to me how good it is. And I don't want to refer to it as palate fatigue when you're drinking beer more regularly. I just think you lose the appreciation for it, not willingly. It just happens. But you crack that first one after a week off or so, and oh my God, it just tastes so good.
What's the expression? Distance makes the heart grow fonder.
There you go.
I mean, I can't help but think about that. And being so distant from, our favorite beverage, you really do appreciate it when you do indulge. So
yeah,
this is a great comment. I have to think that it does sort of refresh your palate a little bit and give you kind of a recharge or restart maybe. And as much as I want to argue it and think that I don't participate in this, I'm a very seasonal brewer. So coming off of, an even beer drinker, I usually will wait until November, December, maybe January to drink like the bigger beers, like your Russian Imperial stouts and barley wines and whatnot, barrel-aged beers in general. And having a month in January where I'm just, abstaining from everything just kind of resets the palate a little bit and gives me a new kind of appreciation, I think, for beer.
Yeah.
And not being so driven to consume everything, but just give me an opportunity to kind of just reset, recharge, and then, push forward. Moderately,
without a doubt. And also kudos to you guys for starting this thing and then having kind of a secondary discovery be that it was whatever it was that your wife was consuming was contributing to her migraines. And the fact that, I've only had 2 migraines in my life, and I get really annoyed when people refer to regular headaches as migraines, because if you've ever had a migraine, it's not a regular headache. Oh my God, they're god awful.
I've never had one. My wife suffers from them because of her TMJ in her jaw.
Yep.
So I am very sympathetic to people who suffer from migraines, and it's amazing how you can figure out, whether it be sugar, gluten, dairy, or like in my wife's case, her jaw, that kind of cause these horrible, debilitating headaches.
Debilitating. It's so true. My cousin suffers from migraines as well, and it just breaks my heart. So good for you guys. I think that's amazing. Again, like a secondary discovery because of your participation in, I've never heard of Whole30 diet, but whatever it is, that's such an amazing discovery. Next comment comes from somebody who calls themselves Patchworks, and they say, I honestly don't do it, but if you do, I respect your choice. The beer garage is my favorite place in the world. I work my ass off to raise my family, and I love brewing. I've got no shame in enjoying a pint or two after a long day. We're all going to be dirt someday, so enjoy life, but do it with responsibility. That's my motto. This I can say without hesitation that I'm with you, Patchworks. That is exactly kind of the sentiment that I have in my heart, is to each their own. And again, if I'm going to enjoy my life more by coming home from work and having a pint or two of beer that I put my elbow grease into making, and it's not screwing with my family, screwing with my work, negatively affecting my health, then by all means, I have no judgment, no shame, do you.
Exactly. I think Patchworks might be somebody from Chicago. I've heard the name before in different like Facebook groups and stuff like that. I'm not really 100% sure, but if memory serves me correct. But yeah, I like his comment a lot. It's one that, reminds us, right, like of why we're in this hobby, because it's kick ass, and I've been talking to somebody about, beer consumption lately, and he was mentioning, liking the communal, aspect of brewing and drinking. And I can't help but think about that with this comment.
Yeah.
And, kudos to you for working your ass off for yourself and for your family, and indulging and having something to, sit and enjoy. So that's awesome.
It really is, and I gotta say, we've got a lot of comments from our patrons, and because of our love and appreciation for what they do, I think we're gonna go through most of them. If we don't get to one, it's purely because of time. But one thing that I've noticed so far in the 6 or so comments that there's really this absence of sanctimony. I was expecting there to be people to be way more hot-headed about this topic, and really it's a lot of you do you. I respect your choice. I may not be into it, or I'm into it, but I don't expect anybody else to fall in line. I think that's pretty cool.
I think it's because of what we have established here with Brewlosophy, and not having this holier than thou attitude towards, running experiments, and, you brew it that way. That's cool. I'm going to do it this way. So I wonder how much of that is playing in this. But yeah, I've noticed it too. It's awesome too.
There is I've been described as painfully equivocal, and I think that's kind of a funny description for me. I think I mentioned in a recent episode also that my wife has referred to me as annoyingly optimistic. I get it, and I totally see where she's coming from. But I do live my life not thinking very intentionally that my way is the right way. And so maybe that is kind of seeping into the people who like us enough to support us on Patreon, at least. Next comment comes from Arthur Olcott. Now watch them all turn. We'll see. Arthur says, I don't do dry January as I don't feel the need to stop enjoying the odd beer in the evenings for 1 month. I know people that do participate and they feel good for it, so I'm very pleased that it works for them and supportive of them doing it. It's a tough month for smaller breweries post-Christmas as it is, so it's a bit of a double kick in the pants for them having to deal with this event as well as eating into potential sales. We kind of commented on this earlier, but Steve, anything else on that?
Well, I hear what he's saying, what Arthur's saying here, but at the same time, I don't feel responsible for that. And I know that there are breweries that have some incredible people involved behind the scenes or front and center in the breweries who come up with different strategies to help facilitate money coming into their brewery, whether it be live music, food, different food and beer pairings. I know one really popular one around here at least is with Valentine's Day, and coming up with a 5-course dinner or something like that, and those are going to cost a pretty penny, for people. So I don't think that it's definitely going to affect their bottom line for those months when they're not so busy. But at the same time, if COVID and that time period didn't teach us anything, it's you need to adapt. And lo and behold, if anybody wants to argue this, I think dry January is kind of here to stay. So you need to just kind of pivot and think of innovative ways, and it's your business, grow and make it work for you. It might not be the same for everybody, but I'm sure that you can come up with something.
Yeah, I mean, if dry January is coming in a couple of months, it's October or whatever, and you're scared that you're going to be impacted, come up with a cool idea. Come up with new offerings. I guarantee you, these people who are participating in dry January aren't doing it with the intention of hurting your bottom line.
No,
that's not what they're thinking. Nope. If they can come hang out at a brewery and you've got different, non-alcoholic options that maybe aren't even beer, they're going to come and they're going to come support you. So I'm with you on that one. Again, we are not beholden to the breweries out there. Thank you for doing what you do. Don't get me wrong.
For sure.
By all means. So Okay, Andrew Brozak says, I agree with others here that a healthy relationship with alcohol year-round is definitely the better option, but for some people that maybe are questioning how healthy their relationship with booze is, it's a good starting point. Having that month where it seems like everyone's trying to abstain may just be the push that some people need to take a break and readjust. The closest thing I can compare to it is a couple years ago, I was hitting the gym 5 days a week, but my schedule changed at work and I was having trouble finding time to go. I felt bad, like I was losing all that ground I had worked so long to gain, but then I started seeing flyers everywhere about a national push-up challenge. It was just a challenge open to anyone to do 100 push-ups a day for a whole month. Wow. I decided to try it and it was exactly what I needed. Simple idea, but I wouldn't have thought to do it without seeing those flyers. It's worth noting that just by periodically mentioning my progress in that challenge around people I work with, by mid-month, there were several others participating with me. No peer pressure. They just thought it sounded cool and jumped in. After it was over, some of those people ended up making physical fitness more of a priority in their lives, which I think is pretty cool.
That's awesome. It's amazing how human beings can actually be, somewhat supportive and cool at times. Yeah. And this is a great example of that. So yeah, I think it really does touch on something that I kind of mentioned earlier a little bit, but just kind of bring up again and touch on it some more. This kind of like whole like new perspective I have with drinking. And it's not something that, I'm not controlled by the 6 taps that I have in my garage, and the commercial beers that I have in my beer fridge. I'm in control of that. It doesn't control me. And that's what this kind of speaks to me at least. And it's just, we take a break, we readjust, we kind of reevaluate things. And I'm better for it, in a very personal level. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. My brewing for Brewlosophy will continue. I will still have fun doing it. And I'm thankful that we're kind of in that realm of like, brewing a lot of like pale ales and blonde ales and stuff like that, light lagers. And that was always something I noticed even before I came on board as a contributor, like, wow, there's a lot of like the same styles. Now I know, and of course there's always, that idea that it's a little bit easier to brew a beer like that, when we're doing experiments and stuff like that. So I get that. But this really does kind of coincide with me, having a lighter beer on tap. And if I'm going to indulge a little bit, then it's better than, having this, big, huge, 7, 8, 9% beer that I feel obligated to finish. Once it's in my keg.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'll tell you, Andrew doing 100 push-ups a day for an entire month, that equates to about 3,000 push-ups. The thought of that makes me sore. And
yeah.
I think, even more so than like a dry January, where you're not participating in something. In this one, you're actually you're adding something to your daily routine. And man, I just think that's so admirable. That's one that I could see myself trying. I don't know how he must break it up into like 4 sets of 25 push-ups or something. Cause that sounds like it would be.
Yeah,
my goodness gracious, 100 push-ups a day. That's nuts.
When I'm working out with my trainer during the week, we will do like maybe like 15, maybe 20. Yeah. And I mean, they're on boxes too. So it's not even like, the real hardcore stuff. But that I can see it being broken up into like, 4 or 5 segments, which is still awesome. So that's pretty rad.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Dustin Brown says, life is all about balance. Sometimes it's good to take breaks from or moderate the things we enjoy that may not be healthy for us, whether beer, fast food, video games, binge watching TV, etc. Although I don't participate in dry January, I like to take breaks where I abstain from or substantially reduce my beer consumption. It's good for the mind and body and makes me appreciate beer and homebrewing more. I think this is becoming kind of the common theme here is I appreciate people who do it. I don't do it myself, but there are times where I kind of integrate elements of abstinence or reduced consumption.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense. And I'm happy that there are people out there who are kind of seeing that, there is another side to this. It's not all, doom and gloom, and we're losing homebrewers and whatnot and beer drinkers. No, we're just resetting and kind of, taking another look at it from a different perspective. Yeah. That's all.
Well, and there's an argument to be made for by homebrewing, you can kind of learn to moderate your consumption with it sitting right there in front of you. I mean, there are treatment approaches that involve that, right? And so I'm with it. I think it's really cool, even though I'm not participating. Quentin Keats says, I don't participate in Dry January, but I have close friends that do, and I respect their decision. Here we go again. Alcohol is a very powerful thing and should be respected and controlled by every user. If Dry January is a tool people choose to use to help control their usage of alcohol, then by all means. Being in my mid-40s, I find myself starting to think more about the ill effects of that alcohol poses. I control my usage by only brewing and drinking low ABV beers, and I very rarely have more than 3 beers in a single sitting. By changing my drinking habits, I found an equilibrium between my health and homebrew and craft beer. That goes right along with what I was just saying. His brewing, in a weird way, helped him to have a better or a healthier relationship with alcohol overall. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. It's control. It's what you want to drink and what works for you and your body. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Alan Gondry says, I did not participate this year. While New Year's resolutions and Dry January have great intentions, I seldom complete either. I think it's important to step away periodically for a week or two. I'm also intrigued by intentionally not drinking on odd or even days or even weeks, he says. I also noticed as soon as Dry January comes around, the Clean and Sober group gets vocal. I'm curious what he means by that, because I'm not sure I know what he's talking about there.
I kind of think I do. It's the crowd that, and full disclosure, guys, I was a vegan for 12 years. I think I mentioned that before, right? No,
I don't know. I didn't know that.
You
or
didn't
if you
know
did,
that?
I was probably too drunk to remember.
Okay. Yeah, I was vegan for 12 years.
Damn.
And it seemed to me when you get a group of people in a room, vegans telling on other people that they're vegan is one thing. People who do Dry January will be another. And I think that's what he's getting at. And the people who do CrossFit will remind you every chance they get that they do CrossFit. So
it's so true.
We have finally hit the trifecta with this vocal group, as Alan says. And I think that's what he's talking about. If not, shoot me a message, Alan, and set me straight. But yeah, it does kind of ring true to me, at least. And no, I was never the vocal one to tell everyone that they need to be vegan when I was a vegan for 12 years. Hell, I don't even know if I've mentioned this on this podcast for the last, 5 years. And I was never really that vocal about the Dry January thing, other than, hey, Steve, do you want to go to this distillery with us? No, I really don't, because I'm not drinking this month. Oh, cool. Okay. Are you sure? It sounds kind of fun. You might like it. I'm like, yeah, I will definitely like it, but probably if I'm consuming the whiskey at this distillery.
Right.
So,
right.
I'm going to pass.
There's nothing more depressing than being at a brewery and not being able to consume. I mean,
Right?
that would be awful. That's like the definition of hell, in my opinion. Where you've got this beautiful thing in front of you that you like, but you're committed to not want, to not drinking it for a month or whatever. So I think the point what you're saying, and now it's starting to make a little bit of sense to me, is this idea of like virtue signaling, right?
Yes.
Like people are very, very wont to. There was a funny joke that my friend told me one time, and he goes, he was. You can use it for anything, so we can put it to Dry January. Basically, it goes like this: Hey, Steve, how do you know if somebody participates in Dry January?
I don't know, Marshall. How?
Well, don't worry, they'll let you know.
Oh. Yeah.
And it sort of goes along with that. My friend told me about that with an iPhone. He's like, how do you know if somebody has an iPhone? Oh, don't worry about it. They'll be sure to let you know.
Oh, yeah.
But I get what he's saying. It does seem to be. Now, maybe I just don't run in circles where people are virtue signaling about dry January. I barely knew you were participating in it. And it was only because you had mentioned it in passing in our chat group that we have. I mean, and most people I know who participate are the same way. It's not like they're wearing it as a badge of honor. They're not doing it for any other reason than personal stuff. And so I think but I get what Alan's saying now.
Oh,
That's
for sure.
funny.
For sure.
Chris Fanning says, here it comes. I do a moist January, but only because the word moist is so unpleasant to my wife that she practically begs me to quit. Truly, I try to go a short time with no alcohol to help reset my tolerance. Usually this coincides with a cut. He put that in air quotes or quotes. I'm not sure what that means. Since most of my friends also enjoy beer, it can be mixed results. On the one hand, people accept when you're not drinking in January. Yet when I try to cut out some any other month, there's always a gathering that challenges my resolve. I'm not one to follow the herd, but it is easier when more people are doing it, even if it makes me a bit of a sheep. Oh, that's a really neat comment, that the bigger dry January gets, the easier it becomes for some people like Chris to complete it, the way it's supposed to be completed.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I like that. Even though it's not me, I would do it, just out of spite, maybe.
Like the way he calls it moist January for his wife.
Yes, that is awesome. I think I need to adopt that more. Maybe make a T-shirt. I'm
moist, but only for the month of January. Good Lord. This is devolving quickly.
Yeah.
We've only got 3 more of these, so we are going to make it through all of them. I do want to say, though, that there is an interesting change that I'm experiencing as we're going through this. I'm realizing, though, that there are certain events that I don't know if I would ever skip drinking for. And you mentioned New Year's Eve. That to me is like the invitation to go overboard. And I'm comfortable admitting that. I like to do that sometimes, I love New Year's Eve. I love tying one on and drinking champagne when I never drink champagne, and being with a group of people who are so just drunk enough to start dancing when they would normally not dance, like that is, I love that. And I'm realizing that about myself, that I'm perfectly okay. If I'm going to a different country. I was in Czech Republic a couple years ago, and we all know, that's where Pilsner was invented. You better believe I had no qualms going to a place that served fresh Pilsner Urquell and just tying one on with the locals there. It was so fun, and I'm okay with that. I'm also perfectly okay with people not having that perspective,
Yeah, I don't share your perspective on New Year's Eve. It's the one holiday that I really don't like all that much. And typically I'm in bed by like 9:00 on that night, as my wife can attest to. Actually, this year though, because I sat and contemplated this idea of a dry January at like 8:30 at night on New Year's Eve, after we both agreed that we would do it, I kind of tied one on myself with some beers that I had. One was a barrel-aged rye beer that Great Lakes put out back in like October, I think, that I bought myself for my birthday. And it was damn good. So, I had maybe three bigger beers that night. And then I went to bed at like 10:30. So yeah, I can't remember the last time I actually, I don't know the last time I was actually up, really late on New Year's Eve. It might have been 1999.
Damn, the Y2K one
going into 2000.
Yeah. That was fun.
That one was that was an evening of White Russians becoming Black Russians, unbeknownst to me, in my drunken stupor. So
blackout Russians is what it was.
Pretty much. Pretty much. You can draw your own conclusions there, and I'll let your imagination run. Man. Yeah.
All right. Next comment comes from Justin Gerharder, who says, "None of us are getting out of this alive. Might as well do what you like. That said, I've done dry January multiple times for no other reason than to challenge myself. I never noticed any tangible benefits." You know what? This is something that every dry January, for the last 2 or 3 years at least, you're whether you're checking out brewing forums or craft beer forums on Facebook or Reddit or wherever it is that you like to go, you will often see people commenting, or I have noticed at least commenting on, hey, it's been, 25 days. There's only one more week left of this, and I've not lost any weight. I'm not feeling any different. Am I doing something wrong? And I do think that for some people, if you're maintaining your health already, and you're working out, you're exercising, you're eating relatively healthy, you're probably not going to see these. And I put this in very, very bold air quotes. You're not going to see the gains that some people see when they participate. Also, different bodies are different. We know that. But I agree with Justin on this. You're not getting out of this thing alive. Enjoy yourself. And that can mean participating in Dry January. It might actually contribute to you enjoying life a bit more. So
exactly.
Yeah, agreed.
Exactly. I totally agree.
So Brett Montgomery says, here in Australia, we instead have Dry July, which also works as a fundraiser for cancer support. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
It's a worthwhile initiative and a reminder that cancer is one of alcohol's principal health hazards. But personally, rather than take a month off and be tempted to then overdo things, we haven't touched on that yet, I prefer to keep my drinking moderate year-round by having about 5 standard drinks per week. At this level, I get to minimize health impacts while still getting to brew. That is a big thing I've noticed with any sort of restrictive type of a decision, whether it's dieting or Dry January, is that there are those people who the day before it starts are going to gorge themselves. And then the day after it ends, it's like, yay, I'm back at the playground. Let's go to town.
Right. Yeah. I personally, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back at all with this. You know me, I'm really modest. I have not overindulged in after I started drinking again, after Dry January, after those whatever 37 days. As a matter of fact, I think the one time that I actually felt a buzz was the first night that I enjoyed a beer, and it was like a 7.5% ABV beer. So it was up there, and I was just sitting down to dinner, and I definitely felt the effects of it. But for right now, it's Coors Banquets, maybe some Daisy Cutter from Half Acre, just really light stuff that I have on tap. That's it's just easy drinking stuff. So I haven't overindulged, which feels good and kind of is congruent with what I'm trying to maintain and what I'm trying to build on right now for my own health.
Yeah.
So, but I can understand it
without a doubt. And I really like that, at least in Australia, what Brett's saying is that Dry July, which remember, he's Southern Hemisphere. So July, I believe, is winter there, where it's our summer up here. So it's weird that they line it up with, they for whatever reason, there's like this coordinated, it seems to me, a coordinated attempt to do these dry months during the cooler seasons. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I do love that in Australia, they pair it with a fundraiser for cancer support. To me, that externalizes that motivation a little bit more. It doesn't have to just be a personal decision, which I think is the most powerful, but also by participating, you're raising awareness and money for something insanely meaningful.
Exactly.
And hey, look, if anybody out there who works for the Dry January organization, I think they're called Change Drinking UK or something like that, consider pairing it with a fundraiser. I think you might actually get a lot more people participating if they know that, it's kind of like the jogathons our kids do at school, where they're not going to be running like 10 miles, but you throw money at them anyways because they're doing something to try to make some money for their school. I think that could actually be really successful. So final comment comes from William Goris, who says, to me, Dry January is up there in effectiveness with a colon cleanse. Maybe it makes you feel better, but long-term sustainable habits are the way to live, in my opinion. Not that I'm personally necessarily 100% effective with that, but at least I try every day and overall have had high success. Man, I know that William Goris here is probably trying to make us laugh, which we did, but I totally agree with him. I have a good friend who swears by chiropractic. if you look at the research on chiropractic, I would never go see a chiropractor myself. Do you think I'm telling my buddy he shouldn't go do that? No, I don't care what you do with your life.
Right.
I just don't buy the hocus pocus of, spinal readjustment and stuff. And I guarantee you, we've got chiropractors listening to this episode right now. I love you. You do you. I just don't agree with the philosophy behind it. So I'm with William on this one too. That to me, for me personally, if I were to engage in dry January, it would have to be for a far more external reason, like raising awareness and raising funds for something, than it would be personal, because I don't have an issue related to the drinking in my life. It's March 2nd right now. We're recording this the day before the show comes out. The first time that I got almost blackout drunk, and I wasn't even that, was last night. I'm sitting here now without a hangover, feeling perfectly fine. Part of the reason that I'm able to engage, the way that I did last night, I think I mentioned it earlier, went out with our friends and just bar hopped like we were 20. It was awesome. It was so much fun. And, we Ubered home. We did everything responsibly. I remember every conversation I had with my kids when I got back. I slept great. I woke up this morning and here we are recording an episode. It's not an issue for me. Like, that was the first time, 3 months it took for me to get to the point of actually drinking the way I did when I turned 21. I'm fine with that.
I mean, to each their own, right? I mean,
yeah.
And it's going to affect you. It's going to affect you differently than it's going to affect me, and it's going to affect William here, or anybody else who has made comments. And I just think it's such a individual type of thing that if it works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I will go on and maybe continue this dry January thing next year. I don't know. But I do know that I'm more responsible, I think, with how I'm perceiving drinking and brewing even too. And I will definitely go make an appointment with my chiropractor.
Yeah. And that's the thing. In the same way that I couldn't care less if somebody chooses to or not to participate in chiropractic, is the same sentiment that I have with dry January, sober October, no nut November, Movember, whatever you're doing. You do you, man. If it makes your life feel more meaningful, to me, that is far more important than the temporary, joyful experience you might get from indulging in alcohol or whatever. You can learn a lot about yourself by doing something like dry January. If that's something that you need, do it. I mean, I think it's really cool. Will I be participating in dry January? I have no desire to do that. And so it's going to take a lot for me to muster the will to do something I don't feel would benefit me at all. But if there is something that comes along with it, like I mentioned earlier, that is more external, that we're raising money for something or whatever, then maybe I'd do it, or maybe I would just contribute money and keep drinking anyways, because I've got like family birthdays and stuff in January and that I don't want to be dry for, So
yeah,
that's just my thing. I don't see the point in doing that personally, but I love the fact that other people do and that it contributes, goodness to their existence, and that is key for me.
Right.
On the topic of dry January, I was going to ask you if you plan to participate again next year. You just said that maybe you will, and I think that is a fair enough answer. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap this one up, Steve?
I just like the overall feel for this entire episode, and just kind of, we all don't need to agree on everything, but we can also, have a way of articulating our points. And I'm getting way too heady here, but this is only beer, Steve. Who gives a shit? But I just think it's a comment on, damn, let's just stop taking things so damn seriously, and so I want to participate in dry January. You don't, and some of our listeners want to, and some of them don't. Okay, it's good, and just go from there. So
yeah,
whatever your decision is.
And here's the cool thing. I'm with you. And I one of the things that I really hoped for when we were designing Brewlosophy in general was to maybe not so overtly as we've been on this episode, but to really encourage thoughtfulness and to kind of convey this idea that beer is more than just beer, that we really can build community around it and bring people who may have wildly different, opinions about various aspects of life together around this wonderful thing that for thousands of years, arguably, has brought people together. It was designed to do that. And I think that we've done a decent job of that, at least. And I really appreciate all of our patrons for sharing their opinions with us and allowing us to read them on the show. If we missed one of yours, I apologize. I was copying and pasting them into this document. I may have skipped one, but we appreciate everything that all of you, the support that you give us, and then for sharing these. If you liked this Brews Use, the way that we integrated other people's opinions, please do let me know. Or if you didn't like it, you can let us know as well. Just email feedback@brewlosophy.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Brewlosophy Show, at youtube.com/@TheBrewlosophy Show. That's the @ symbol followed by The Brewlosophy Show with no umlaut. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm confident you're going to love the videos that Martin's creating over at YouTube as well. And make sure to head over to brewlosophy.com to stay current on all of the fun beer and brewing stuff we are up to. The Brewlosophy Podcast is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors as well as all of our rad listeners. We seriously could not do this without you. Cheers to everyone who has subscribed and left a review of our show. It makes a huge difference. If you haven't yet, please consider doing so. Head over to brewlosophy.com/support to view a list of ways you can easily help us to continue producing this podcast. If you want a reward for your support, visit patreon.com/brewlosophy. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Brewlosophy Podcast. Until then, think beer.
Start off the morning with some hot tea, lemon and honey cause it suits my bro. Put some herb in the bowl, yeah, it's homegrown. Ain't gotta go through the middleman no more.